Now we'll get started. Good evening and welcome everyone. The Town of Los Gatos Council meeting of December 3rd, 2024 is now called to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Isto?
Here.
Councilmember Ennie?
Here.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hudas?
Here.
Mayor Badami?
Here. Our next item is going to be the Pledge of Allegiance, and I am so delighted to introduce three pledge leaders tonight. So would Pari, Myra, and Sahara please come forward and join me behind the dais. Hello, girls. All right, let me tell you about these girls. Pari Ambali is a fourth grade student at Stratford School. Her favorite subject is math. Her favorite activities are dancing, piano, and tennis. Community service includes receiving the Presidential Service Award for various service projects, including community gardening and cards for hospitalized kids. That's a big feat. We had a couple girls last meeting that also received that same award. Sahara Biswas is also a fourth grade student at Alta Vista Elementary. Her favorite activities are arts, crafts, dance, and piano. Her community service also includes receiving the Presidential Service Award for activities, including a winter coat drive, trail cleanup, care packages for the unhoused, and volunteering at the Senior Center. Myra Zavari is a fourth grade student also at Stratford School. Her favorite subjects are math, science, and art. Her favorite activities are gymnastics, swimming, taekwondo, and Girl Scouts. Community service includes the Magic Yarn Project, making yarn wigs for cancer patient survivors, and Jane Temple Food Distribution Service at JCNC organization. Let's have a round of applause for these girls. All right, so they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, let's stand.
Please join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job, girls. Thank you so much. Now, each of the council members would love to shake your hand. So we can start with the Vice Mayor Hudas, and then Councilmember Rennie, and work your way down for Councilmember Moore and Councilmember Isto. Back this way, girls, girls. I want to shake your hand too. Thank you. You did a great job. Thank you. Thank you. Congratulations. And they get little gifts at the end. These girls deserve one more round of applause. Thank you. Thank you to the parents for bringing them. Okay, from there we're going to move to the first item of consent items. And consent items are considered routine town business. They can be approved by one motion, and any member of the council can pull an item or comment on it or take action on it. Do any council member wish to pull an item or make a comment? Seeing no hands up. Members of the public can also comment on the consent calendar. Would any member of the public wish to make a comment on the consent calendar? Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to close the consent items and look to my council members for a motion. Councilmember Isto.
Thank you. I move to approve consent items 1 through 15. I apologize.
Councilmember Moore?
Second.
All right. Roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. At this time, I'm going to open verbal communications, and members of the public may speak for 3 minutes on any matter that is not listed on the agenda. I have a few speaker cards, so I'm going to start with Rob Stump. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, council and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. Again, my name is Rob Stump, a Los Gatos resident for 52 years living on Foster Road. I've addressed the council on 2 occasions this year, beginning in April, encouraging the town to pursue a second point of public access for Los Gatos High School as envisioned upon redevelopment of the Los Gatos Lodge property. In October 2022, the staff laid the groundwork to address access issues that are concerned to both the high school district as well as the town, and to set the stage for future egress through the high school and the Los Gatos Lodge property. The benefits address public safety issues, including traffic congestion, school safety, and emergency evacuation. This is truly a once-in-a-lifetime solution for the high school and the community. Over the past several months, I've met with most of the council members, the former town manager, community development director, the high school superintendent, and Santa Clara County Fire Department to raise awareness and encourage us to action. Strong support was voiced by all parties except the town staff. The town staff, which takes their lead from the top, has remained silent. Emergency access has been agreed to by the high school district and the applicant, which will terminate in 2 locked gates. One at the high school parking lot, wonderful location, and one at the proposed development. The school districts in Santa Clara County Fire Department prefer a second point of public access, not a gravel road that cuts through the high school athletic fields and terminates in locked gates. The applicant has indicated no willingness to consider a second point of public access. And the town's position after all these months, I do not know. As time marches on, the opportunity to do something great for Los Gatos High School, the community, and even the future residents of this development diminishes. Why would the town not seize the opportunity to discuss this with the applicant? It's one of the great mysteries of life. Going forward, there is no other feasible solution to improve access in and around the high school, reducing traffic congestion, improving school safety, and facilitating emergency evacuation, heavy emphasis on emergency evacuation. I ask our new town manager to review this matter and reevaluate the town's position. If not now, when? Thank you very much for the time this evening.
Thank you. Vice Mayor's got a question for you.
Thank you, Rob, for coming forward with this. This is really important opportunity to explore. And my comments or question is not a reflection of anything that'll come before us as an application. But I did want to know whether you've had further discussions with the school district. I know that you had some discussions with the superintendent, and my understanding was that they were a little more positive toward the idea than maybe we had assumed. And have you had further discussions with the interim superintendent or anyone else in leadership?
Let me ask the question, positive idea towards which?
Toward allowing secondary access.
The school district has taken the position all along with the fire department, that they would much rather have a public access road, not just emergency access. And to answer your question directly, Councilmember Hudes, I have not met with the interim school superintendent at this point in time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stump. Next speaker is Rich Stevens.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I appreciate everything that you all do, so thank you very much. My name is Rich Stevens, and I was born in Los Gatos almost 60 years ago. Since the spring, I've had a number of discussions regarding the Newtown development. I proposed townhomes, and instead of the 7-story building, the high-rise, and sent a rough layout to Swenson Construction of what that might look like. Feedback seemed to be leaning positive up until 2 weeks ago. And I received on November 22nd a concerning email from Case Swenson stating that they were going to continue their application for builder's remedy with the original 7-story plan. He said that they were going to originally toll the application, but in his words, it became too complicated legally. He stated that they were a month away from deeming the 7-story plans complete, and so they were going to follow through with the application. He did go on to state, at that point, we are going to consider moving forward with the townhome project, and that the town seems to be in support, but there are legal issues that they are uncertain of. So I'm hoping I'm misinterpreting his remarks, but my fear, due to recent articles that appear to infer potential cash flow problems and not receiving feedback in the last 2 weeks from him, that Swenson may be pushing the town for approval of this high-rise building and then potentially sell the land with the approval to raise cash. I have had discussions with town staff as far back as April about converting to a townhouse option, and consensus was there was no legal concern. So I'm confused why he's saying there is now. Is there a reason why the town wouldn't want to work with Swenson to replace the high-rises with townhomes? That's a question for everyone. Is this a legitimate concern or possibly a diversion by Swenson? I'd like to know that if anybody has any information. We all live here with the beauty and knowledge of the town's building codes and height limitations. My ask of you is to do everything you can do to stop this and other horrible, monstrous high-rises that are potentially going to be built in Los Gatos. I invite every citizen of Los Gatos to please get involved. This is something that will affect all the residents and will be permanent. We need everyone's help in stopping these high-rises. To Case specifically, please step up, help protect our town, be a hero. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Come back, please. Got a question. Councilmember Rennie.
So my question is really for staff. Because builder's remedies are potential litigation, we have to discuss stuff carefully in closed session. Is there anything we can share about this that can be public?
I'm happy to share that I provided Mr. Swenson with a proposed tolling agreement that would toll the deadlines that apply to the proposed project, and that those deadlines would allow the applicant to apply for a different project in the interim if they chose to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Jeff Lockridge.
It's been a while. So I've started seeing signage around town regarding proposed projects that are extraordinarily large, in my opinion, and these projects will certainly exacerbate our current traffic problems. And how will they affect schools, water, and power? Many of them are taller than our general plan guidelines of 3 stories. How is this happening? Why haven't these projects been rejected by the planning department? I really want to know what's going on, because I talk to my neighbors and no one knows what's going on. I can't find it online. I went online and I couldn't find the why, but the specifications for the projects were definitely surprising. Many projects were taller than our town height limit of 3 stories. What I couldn't tell from the charts of these projects was what was expired, in progress, or complete, and what they actually meant. This needs to be explained, as well as any justification for the excessive heights and impacts. These might make sense to those in the planning department, but need to be explained in detail to town residents who will have to live with the results. Plus, few of these market rate projects added more than our current 20% affordable housing requirements. I've also been hearing rumors that state mandates have become punitive for Los Gatos. This needs to be explained as well. Something about missing a deadline by 1.5 years? Is this true? And is there anything we can do now? And what is our actual punishment? I also couldn't find online a list of the public hearings regarding each project either. It is very disconcerting that we have so many proposed projects that require public review and no way to know when each will be discussed unless I go through each agenda of upcoming meetings. A transparent list of all public hearings should be made available. The information and images that are on the signs at each site should be shown in our town online newsletter so that people will find out about this. Story polls. They are visual cues for residents to imagine how large a proposed building will be. How will you prepare residents for 6 to 13-story monstrosities? Notice should be given to all those affected, which basically is a whole town. We need to discuss as a town the potential impact of these projects. It seems that our faith in our town council may have been misplaced. Is this town council currently representing Los Gatos residents? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Risto?
Yeah, I actually have a question for staff.
You can be seated since it's for staff.
Thank you. I don't know at the end if we can just clarify that there have been no hearings scheduled, which is why they're not findable, and that online we have a way for residents to opt in to get updated about every single proposal coming forward. I don't know if that information can be shared further or how. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Yes, no hearings for any of the items has currently been scheduled. We do have a state law website specific to the SB 330 applications, as well as project status. We have been doing 1,000-foot noticing for pre-applications, and for those who had been submitted prior to submitting a formal application, we have been doing 1,000-foot notices for the formal application, and then when hearings come forward, it will also be a 1,000-foot notice.
And then in addition, I believe there's a way, not just through Notify Me, but on the town website to opt in specifically to get an email every time there is progress on any of these applications.
I'll have to look into that. I'm not familiar with that option.
Okay. I think that's either in the works or going on, but we'll make sure that Mr. Lockridge gets the information.
Okay, our last speaker card, Gus Hu, please come forward. Welcome, Gus.
First of all, I did bring some flowers. I'm going to pass them out afterwards because I'd rather just give them to individuals because I don't think a lot of this stuff gets to the people that I like to have got to. My fun part. And then something went bump. How the bump made us jump. Suppression. I cannot use the screen, so I do have this because I'm getting suppressed not to be able to I protested the election. I know you're not supposed to say a sign, but this is the election was rigged because I said I have a video clip of a shooter coming out of, and I've already, spoke with town clerk before the election day about protesting election 500, and she said 500 feet from election, the development, that's where you can not protest. And I'm a poor speaker. I spoke to the Department Review Committee meeting on November 5th, 10 a.m., and I showed them a clip of a minute 22-second clip of the second shooter, and I showed people in the community of this clip. And so it's in the footnotes there. And council member Risto saw me protesting, and she just walked away. But I would like to show you this clip so the community, and I know it's controversial, but it's important because our everything you guys are getting sued, and I've actually sued you guys way back when, before I got to talk to you guys. Another thing was last week I didn't get to show the overhead view on Lynn Avenue, that the sidewalk, there is no sidewalks on that Lynn Avenue. That's the only street in the area, and it's very, very, I would say like shotgun in stuff, and it would be like, no, that's so dangerous. I should be saying gun. I spoke with, I have a lawsuit that's against the state, but you guys are listed in it, and it's way before that. I know I only have 7 seconds, so I'll leave it with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Any questions for Gus? Seeing none?
If you want to see the video, it's on a school with no name on Facebook. It's a minute 22 seconds, or
Okay.
I can wait till after the meeting and show you guys.
Thank you, Gus. All right, would anybody else like to speak to us on any item that is not on the agenda? You can fill out a speaker card and come forward. Any virtual hands raised on Zoom? Okay, Ms. Quintana, please come forward.
Lee Quintana. Good evening. Actually, I want to make a comment on items 18 and 19 because I can't stay for the whole meeting. Can I make them during public comments?
All right, Town Attorney.
Public comments can be made either before or during consideration of the item. So it's at the council's pleasure if they would like to hear comments on 17 and 18 yet already.
Well, I'm going to use the discretion and grant that.
Thank you. On 18, it's just a clarification. The map that's shown in attachment 2 does not include all of the zoning C1, C2, C, H, and O zones in the town. So my question for clarification is, does the ordinance actually cover those that are outside the range of that map? And on 19, my concern is with the provision that gives the staff the authority to amend the guidelines by resolution without any public hearing. I'm assuming it's without any public hearing since I've never seen that wording in a document before. I know that these are things that have to be updated when there are changes in the law, but that seems to be negating the idea of transparency and at least giving the public a chance to know that these changes have taken place. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Town Attorney, did you want to address that now or later?
Whatever works best for the council.
Would council like to hear that now? I would. Okay. Yes.
So the community development director can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the map shows the zoning districts where multifamily housing is permitted because the town is only required to allow the low barrier navigation centers in those 4 zones where multifamily is permitted.
Can I respond to that?
Your 3 minutes are up. Mr. Paulson?
Yeah, thank you, Joe Paulson, Community Development Director. I see Ms. Quintana's point. There are designations that correspond with these that are on this map that are outside of this map, so we'll have to go back and look if we have the discretion to limit those to other parameters and not include all of them in the town. So I can discuss that with the town attorney.
Okay. Thank you. All right, any virtual hands pop up on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Would anybody like to come forward during verbal communication? See no one come forward. I'm going to close verbal communications, and I'm going to go to our first public hearing item, which is item number 16, and that is to introduce an ordinance to repeal town code sections having to do with all-electric construction requirements.
Thank you, Mayor. I will present this item using a PowerPoint, and we also have the town building official present if the council has any technical questions. So this proposal is for the council to consider introduction of an ordinance repealing the town's all-electric reach code. In 2022, the town adopted an ordinance that required all-electric infrastructure in new construction. Next slide, please. Cities throughout the Bay Area adopted similar ordinances. And in 2023, the city of Berkeley's ordinance was challenged by the Restaurant Association on the grounds that the ordinance was preempted by federal law. The federal law at issue is the Energy Policy and Conservation Act, and it prohibits local entities from dictating the energy use of appliances. The Ninth Circuit agreed with the Restaurant Association and invalidated Berkeley's ordinance. Next slide, please. Therefore, in this year, the Restaurant Association contacted the town to ask about the town's all-electric ordinance and whether the town had plans to repeal that in light of the Berkeley decision. Next slide, please. I have reviewed the Berkeley decision and the federal law at issue, and staff recommends that the town repeal its all-electric ordinance because the current state of the law is that those ordinances are preempted by federal law. Next slide, please. If the council opts to introduce the ordinance tonight, it will return for adoption on December 17th, and it would take effect 30 days after that. In the meantime, staff is working with a consultant to draft a new ordinance that would regulate nitrogen oxide emissions from appliances rather than the energy that those appliances use. The consultant will need some time to prepare that ordinance. Next slide, please, and is anticipating having that ready for the town council to consider on December 17th. As a result, if the town opts to repeal the existing all-electric ordinance, there will be a slight gap in time before the new ordinance takes effect. Next slide, please. And so that is the last slide. I'm here if you have legal questions, and the building official is here to answer technical questions.
Thank you for the report. Any questions? Councilmember Risto.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter at this point, but I'm just curious to set the record straight. So when Los Gatos adopted our all-electric ordinance, we did exempt restaurants, correct? So our ordinance was different than Berkeley's to start with?
That is correct. And we did raise that issue with the Restaurant Association. In their mind, the exemption wasn't enough to save the town's electric ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to open public comment. I have no speaker cards. Would anybody like to come forward and speak to us on this item? Okay, please come forward.
I'm just very, very pleased to hear that news, because it kind of sounds like we're free to choose. And I was very concerned over the years, as I think a lot of people have been, when you see the government forcing people in communities to all follow something that should be a choice. So I just hope that you all will get rid of that and anything else that resembles forcing everyone to do something when maybe they really should have a choice. So thank you.
Thank you, Lindley. All right, any virtual hands on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
All right, I'm going to close public comment, go back to my council members for a motion, comments. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just share really quickly that and reiterate as the last time we discussed the nitrogen oxide ordinance. I really appreciate the approach on this and making sure that we continue to do our part to limit the amount of fumes exiting our town. So thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? All right. Vice Mayor.
Make a comment and then prepared to offer a motion if there aren't other comments. I appreciate the town's efforts to improve the environment, and but I voted against adopting these on the council because I felt that we were not on solid legal ground, and also that the possibility of Los Gatos taking a role that could invite a lawsuit could be a problem. So I stand by that. I am open to other approaches, but I'm concerned about enacting an ordinance that has exactly the same effect but has a different rationale. And so I have asked the town attorney to monitor other municipalities that have adopted a similar ordinance, but at this point I am willing to make a motion to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 29 of the Town Code regarding state mandated density. I'm sorry. Is that it? No, that's not the right one.
Is repeal town code sections.
Okay, sorry. I'm in the wrong spot here. What?
I could try the motion if you want. I have it in front of me.
Yeah, I can do it. Introduce an ordinance. I move to introduce an ordinance to repeal Town Code sections 6120060, 6120070, and 6120080, which codify all electric construction requirements.
Councilmember Bristow.
Thank you. I'll second the motion, and you know, I agree that this is what we need to do at this point. And in my mind, the reason I was in favor of the REACH codes was not just the greenhouse gas situation, which we have to grapple with, and our children are counting on us to leave the planet in a better place, but also to reduce indoor pollution. And given that we are protecting people from secondhand smoke by prohibiting smoking in a lot of public places, I viewed it along the lines of reducing indoor pollution. But at this point, it makes sense to repeal this ordinance.
So I'll be supporting the motion. I want to make it clear that I also voted against the new ordinance at a prior meeting. But we're just simply repealing town code sections at this point before any new ordinance comes forward that was previously discussed. So I will call the question. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to item number 17. And this is to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 29, zoning regulations of the Town Code regarding state mandated density bonuses.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is the first of three that are implementing the town's housing element. These are tasks that the town committed to do when it got its housing element certified. And so what's before the council is an ordinance that would update the town's existing density bonus ordinance. Next slide, please. This is implementation program R of the housing element. Next slide. The state density bonus law is set forth in the government code, and its intent is to encourage the development of affordable housing by providing developers with incentives if they provide specified percentages of affordable housing. And those incentives can consist of bonuses in the allowable amount of density It can also consist of waivers of local development standards, and it can also consist of other incentives such as reductions in parking requirements. Next slide, please. As the percentage of affordability increases, the allowable number of incentives and concessions increases proportionally. Next slide, please. The town's current density bonus is codified at the sections that are listed in the town code. Next slide, please. State law has changed since the town originally adopted its density bonus ordinance. As a result, the Association of Bay Area Governments has put together a template ordinance that satisfies current state law requirements. Next slide, please. And so the template that was prepared by the Association of Bay Area Governments is what's in front of the council for consideration. There are a number of changes which are listed, and some of those changes I do think will benefit the town. For instance, the changes, next slide please, require that the application be more specific about why the incentives or concessions will result in cost reductions. And so it will provide the town with more information up front. Next slide, please. And so this slide is talking about the documentation that applicants for density bonuses need to provide to the town. Next slide, please. The ordinance that's proposed tonight was reviewed by the Planning Commission and was recommended for adoption. Next slide, please. If the ordinance is introduced tonight, it will return to the Town Council on December 17th for potential adoption, and it would take effect 30 days after adoption. And I'm available for questions, as is the Community Development Director.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Referring to the Planning Commission, were there changes made, or was there discussion about other changes that might be made to this?
No, there were not.
Thank you.
And at the Planning Commission level, was it a unanimous vote?
It was.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor?
I just wanted to understand this. Why is it necessary for the town to adopt an ordinance if the state already has a law?
It was something that HCD wanted the town to commit to as an implementation program in order to certify the town's housing element. And what some cities do is simply refer to state law in their ordinance. And that used to be less common because there used to be more decision points that cities could make along the way. And so it made more sense for each city to have an individual ordinance. Now the requirements have become so uniform that it almost would make sense to simply reference the state law. But we're recommending that we update the ordinance since we committed to do that as an implementation program in the housing element.
Vice Mayor?
So would it have been an option to respond to HCD when we were doing the housing element, that we would comply with state law and not commit to unnecessary bureaucracy and expense of implementing an ordinance that duplicates state law?
I think that would have been possible. You know, I also think there are applicants who look to the town code to see what our requirements are. So there's arguments on both sides.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open public comment. I have no speaker cards. Any virtual hands raised on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, would anybody like to speak to us on this item? Seeing no one come forward, I'm going to close public comment, go back to my council members for a motion. Comments? Councilmember Isto.
Thank you. I mean, I will make a comment. It seems like it would be easier ultimately if we have references in our housing element that also are in state law, that we could refer to state law because we wouldn't have to keep changing every time state law changes. On the other hand, I can sympathize with an applicant who picks up guidelines that say, see state law, see state law, see state law. So we're in this position. I'm ready to make a motion. I think we should just go forward with this because it is part of our implementation program, but then think about if things keep evolving and changing, is there a more efficient way to do it? So I will move to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 29, zoning regulations of the Town Code regarding state-mandated density bonuses pursuant to Implementation Program R of the 2023-2031 housing element.
Councilmember Moore?
Second.
All right, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Moving along to item number 18, which is to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 29 zoning regulations of the Town Code to add low-barrier navigation centers as a by right use in mixed-use and non-residential zones. We're ready for your report.
Thank you. I have a PowerPoint for this presentation as well. This is also an ordinance change that's required as an implementation program of the town's housing element. The state codifies low barrier navigation center laws at Government Code Section 65660 through 65688, and it requires that any local jurisdiction, including the town, permit low barrier navigation centers in specified zoning districts where multifamily uses are a permitted use. And so we've been through that it's a housing element implementation program. It's interesting, in the housing element, the requirement was that the town allow these in at least 2 mixed-use zoning districts. Next slide, please. A low barrier navigation center is a shelter for homeless individuals and families that is intended to help them obtain permanent housing. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the housing element implementation program that was recommended by HCD required that the town allow this in at least 2 zoning districts. However, upon review of the statute requires that the town allow these in any zones, any mixed use and non-residential zones where multifamily uses are permitted. And in the town, that equates to 4 different zoning districts. And so staff's recommendation is that these be allowed in 4 zoning districts. Next slide, please. Next slide. So the proposed ordinance would add a new section to the zoning code that defines what a low barrier navigation center is, and then amendments to the office, neighborhood commercial, central business district commercial zone. One, I think it says restricted highway commercial zone. And so those zoning districts would be amended to state that low barrier navigation centers are permitted by right uses. Next slide, please. This ordinance was also reviewed by the Planning Commission and was recommended for adoption. Next slide, please. If it's introduced, it would return on December 17th and take effect 30 days after adoption. And I'm available for questions as well as the Community Development Director.
Questions? All right, no one has questions, so I'm going to open public comment. I have no cards. Would anybody like to speak to us on this item? Please come forward. Are there any virtual hands raised on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
All right, last chance. Finley, you can come forward and speak. You can ask the question. It may not be answered because this is just a one-way. No? Okay. All right, I'm going to close public comment, and I'm going to go back to council. Vice Mayor.
So how would this apply to future multifamily that might be allowed through Program J, where we're potentially allowing multifamily on a very wide-scale basis throughout the town?
Well, the town attorney's looking through, Joel Paulson, Community Development Director. If I recall correctly, this is specifically zones that allow mixed use and non-residential. So the Program J is really intended to deal with residential for the most part, but we will need to reconcile, if necessary, any discrepancies between those two laws from a low barrier navigation center perspective. And then I'd also like to offer that in looking at the staff report, the map that Ms. Quintana referenced is not part of the ordinance, so that's not what's being amended. So there are probably a handful of parcels on the east side of town, Los Gatos, Almaden, and Harwood, that center, as well as Blossom Hill Road and Los Gatos, Almaden, and Union, and Blossom Hill and Harwood. There's those two commercial areas there, which this would also apply. So this is, again, that map is not meant to be part of the ordinance update. Thank you.
Okay, I would just like to clarify to the speaker that if you wanted to come forward and speak, I don't want to deny you the right to speak, but when you said you wanted to ask a question, if you wanted to come to the podium and ask the question as part of verbal, we would allow that, but it's one-way communication, and it would be up to the town attorney if she would respond to that. So, okay.
And then I had a follow-up on the vice mayor's question. So the state law is only requiring that the low barrier navigation centers be by right uses in areas that are zoned for mixed use and non-residential zones that permit multifamily. So they are not required to be by right uses in strictly residential zones.
Okay, that's helpful. Good. The reason I asked the question was in the report it was stated that this would apply to multifamily, and apparently it's only multifamily in non-residential. Is that correct?
In only multifamily, only mixed use and non-residential zones where multifamily uses are permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've closed public comment then. No speakers. We have questions answered. I'm looking to council for a motion, comments. Vice Mayor.
In looking at this closely, it looks to me like we're exceeding the direction that we received, so I will not be supporting this change.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 29 of the Town Code to add low barrier navigation centers as a by right use in mixed use and non-residential zones where multifamily uses are permitted pursuant to Implementation Program AD of the housing element.
Do I have a second? Councilmember Isto?
I'll second it for discussion. I am curious what if staff could address the Vice Mayor's comment that we are exceeding what is required and what that is and what latitude we have.
So the implementation program says, in accordance with state law, provide that in at least 2 zoning districts, low barrier navigation centers will be a by right use. But when one goes to look at the state law, it says allow the low barrier navigation centers in any mixed use or non-residential zoning district where multifamily uses are permitted. And so it's staff's conservative recommendation that the ordinance match state law.
Okay, so to follow up, so our commitment was in certain zones. However, looking at state law is saying it has to be more expansive than that. And so a risk we would run if we only did what we said in the implementation program, that we might have to come back and change it.
That's correct.
Are we, if we, so to follow on, if we fulfill what we said we would do in the housing element as an implementation program, we are not at risk of being decertified. We just might be told, look, that's a great implementation program, but it doesn't go far enough? Or what would the downside be to do exactly what we had committed to?
I've only spoken with one jurisdiction that had its housing element decertified, and they did receive a warning letter before they were decertified. And so based on that, it sounds as if HCD does contact local jurisdictions before it takes that step.
Councilmember Rennie, followed by Councilmember Moore.
So the going beyond part is really not so much going beyond as cleaning up and matching state law, which we end up doing frequently. My understanding would be if we didn't choose a commercial zone and somebody wanted to do that there, they could come and say, sorry, you have to let us because state law says that I can do that. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then it makes sense that we're consistent with state law, so there isn't a bunch of confusion. So it seems to me like we should support this.
And Councilmember Rennie asked my exact question. I agree with his reasoning.
Okay, given that only doing what we said in the, if we are more restrictive than state law, it's not going to matter anyway, because anybody who wants to propose something that's covered by state law would then be able to do that. So I'm comfortable with this motion.
So confirm, Ms. Whelan, again, your legal advice is that this would make us compliant with state law without going above and beyond.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second, so I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Did I okay, it passes 4
No.
with 1 opposed by the Vice Mayor. Okay. Moving along to item number 19, to introduce a replacement units ordinance and adopt a resolution adopting replacement units guidelines. Ms. Whelan, another report?
Thank you. So this is the third and final action tonight that's related to housing element implementation. This is a request that the Town Council introduce an ordinance that adopts replacement unit requirements and guidelines. Next slide, please. This was an implementation program outlined in the housing element that was certified by HCD. Next slide, please. There are 3 state laws that require replacement units when proposed projects are going to remove housing units from the town's inventory. Those 3 state laws are Density Bonus Law, Housing Element Law, and the Housing Crisis Act of 2019. Next slide, please. So per density bonus law, when a project proponent is going to demolish existing housing or where there was rental housing located on that site within the last 5 years, the applicant is required to replace those housing units either on site or elsewhere. Next slide. And then housing element law also requires that rental units that are going to be demolished for a new project be replaced. Next slide, please. The Housing Crisis Act contains similar requirements. It now also provides that if there are new non-residential developments proposed, they need to replace any residential units that are being demolished. And in addition, if low-income residents are being displaced as a result of a development project, they are entitled to relocation benefits and a right to return to the project when it's finished. Next slide, please. So staff has prepared an ordinance with the assistance of the law firm of Goldfarb and Littman, and we are recommending that the Town Council introduce that ordinance tonight to match state law requirements. And also in the packet is a resolution that would adopt guidelines, and the guidelines really get into the nuts and bolts of how this program will work, like what information applicants need to submit. It gets into the details of how the program will run. And there was public comment that expressed concern about the fact that staff would have the ability to amend the guidelines without returning to the Town Council. I'm sure staff would be comfortable with a proposal that any amendment to the guidelines return to the Town Council for approval. Next slide, please. The Planning Commission reviewed both the proposed ordinance and the proposed guidelines, and they did recommend adoption to the Town Council. Next slide, please. And then we've spoken before about the timing of all this. If it's introduced tonight, it would return for adoption on December 17th and take effect 30 days after that. And I'm available for questions as well as the Community Development Director.
Okay, Councilmember Moore, followed by Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. So question on the rental piece of this. So rental units must be, demolished rental units must be replaced by additional rental or the same amount of rental units. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Risto.
Thank you. I have two questions. One, if low-income units are destroyed and then replaced, do they have to match the same level of affordability? So say, for example, something is, I don't know, deed restricted as a rental at very low, and somebody proposes building moderate. How does that work?
If I remember correctly, I don't believe the state law goes into that much detail, but what I could do is look that up and return to the council with that information at the next meeting.
Okay, because I would be concerned if somebody has the right of first refusal and they can come back, but it now costs twice as much as what they were living in. That's really not helpful. And then the other question I have is, it talked about if residential is replaced by non-residential, those units still need to be, created somewhere. I probably don't have enough imagination. Can you describe how a residential development would become non-residential? I mean, we've had the opposite happen, but.
So, for instance, if there were, for instance, like a residential project that were located in a commercial zone and a person were to purchase the property and build a Whole Foods supermarket on the site instead, they would need to replace the residential units elsewhere.
Okay, so we actually have residential units in non-residential zones in our town.
I believe so, and the Community Development Director can confirm.
That's correct.
Okay, good to see that covered. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up for questions, so I'm going to open public comment. I have no speaker cards. Are there any virtual hands raised on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Would anybody like to speak to us on this item? Please come forward.
Hi, Karen Yamamoto. I had a question that regarding, is this going to impact the larger builds that are going to be happening or possibility of being proposed? So as soon as this would go into effect, so like the Meadows up there, it's a mixed, it's taking down units that have already been established and everything else, and they're projecting more, but it does not sound like it's going to be affordable, so that it would affect something like that. Is that what I'm understanding?
So the Meadows is a unique situation. I'm sorry. I'll answer it when the council asks.
Yeah, I just need to clarify that you can ask questions, but this is just one-way communication.
I'm just trying to understand. I need a better example of what exactly, how this impacts the community, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, in understanding it.
Okay. After verbal communications, if the town attorney wants to speak up and make a statement, then so be it. But at this point in time, it's one way.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any virtual hands again raised on Zoom? Would anybody like to come forward and speak to us on this item? See no one come forward. I'm going to close public comment. I'm going to go back to council members for comments, motion. Do they have a question? Vice Mayor.
So the question is, does this deviate from state law in any way?
No.
As a follow-up, is this an implementation program that might have been addressed by saying that we will comply with state law regarding replacement units?
I think it's a similar situation to the earlier ordinance. It definitely could have been addressed that way. I do think there are some applicants who like to see what the town's requirements are in the town code.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bristow.
Yes, to follow up with the speaker if we can get an understanding of how replacement units in something like a business, like a retirement facility, are addressed, and then also, is there an example where we've had housing that might be removed that would have to be replaced?
So with regard to the meadows, since it's a commercial operation, I would have to look up the law on that and get back to the council on that at the next meeting. But with regard to examples, so an example would be if any of the projects that are on the town's website right now are destroying single-family homes or townhouses, they do need to replace those units in the new project.
Thank you.
Okay. No further comments, no hands raised. A motion maybe entertained by any council member? Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I will move to introduce a replacement units ordinance and adopt a resolution adopting replacement unit guidelines pursuant to implementation program AU of the 2023 to 2031 housing element.
Councilmember Bristow.
I'll second the motion.
All right, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. All right, our last item, which is item number 20. And this is to receive a report from the police department, an assessment report completed by Meloria Public Safety Consulting. All right, we're ready.
I am obviously not the police chief. The police chief has been doing a presentation at the Montessorino Council. She is on the way, about 3 minutes away from now.
Okay. TikTok, we'll take a break. Let's take a 10-minute break. Okay, council is back. And before we get started on item number 20, we're going to go back to item number 18. I'm going to reopen it for reconsideration of the motion. And with that, I'm going to look to the town attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The town manager reminded me that actually at the Planning Commission meeting with regard to the Low Barrier Navigation Center item, the Planning Commission did recommend that the ordinance include a sunset clause so that it sunsets when the state law requiring it sunsets. And so I'd like to propose that a section 7 be inserted to read sunset clause. This ordinance will sunset on January 1st, 2027, when the Government Code Section 65660 through 65688 are repealed, or upon any earlier date if repealed earlier.
Okay, thank you. Does the maker of the motion wish to accept the refinement offered by the town attorney?
So was that me?
Yes, that was you.
Yeah. Yes, that's fine.
All right, and I think Councilmember Isto, you seconded
Yes.
it? All right, so I will call the question again. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Vice Mayor opposed. Passes 4-0, and again, with one dissent from the Vice Mayor. Now we can move on to item number 20. Welcome, Chief Field. We are looking forward to your report on the organizational assessment. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jamie Field, Chief for Los Gatos Montesrino Police Department. It's my honor to bring to you this evening to receive the organizational assessment put together by Meliora Public Safety Consulting after bringing this thought to you back in January and approval from Council to move forward on commissioning Meliora, and we'll just refer to Meliora for short as we proceed throughout this presentation. So this is a comprehensive study of the police department. The police department has never had a comprehensive assessment in the history that I am aware of. And this is pretty extensive in nature. And if we could go to the next slide, I'll start with just kind of an overview of what occurred pretty much between March and September. So for about a 6-month period, we were heavily engaged in, when I say we, there is opportunities for the community to be part of these focus groups throughout the police department, various divisions, and including a lot of assessment of policies, procedures, and including a 3-year CAD or computer-aided dispatch of those materials that were also provided for analysis and assessment when looking at the workload and other documents and reports that were provided to them that put together the over 300-page document that you had before you as an opportunity to read this evening. This presentation is really intended to be that high-level overview. There will be future opportunities, especially as we take a look at some of the recommendations that may have fiscal implications or other resource needs or impacts in terms of public safety or enhancement opportunities. We will be bringing those back to you, but this is just kind of an initial high-level review to bring before you. It's definitely not necessarily intended for us to get down into the details of what's offered here. Well, we've had this document for about 8 weeks now. We're still working through some of those details of those recommendations, the timeline, the phases that this will entail, but I will leave you at the end of this presentation with some next steps that go with that. So you can see on the screen the data analytics we're gone through, and you probably saw some of the charts and graphs that are within the report as well that sometimes pertain to our call service, our models, some of our service delivery within Los Gatos and within Montesrino as well. And we'll go to the next slide to get into some of those themes that came out of the assessment itself. So theme number 1, taking a look at the organizational structure or reorganization or restructure of the police department. We've been operating this structure for quite some time. And of course, through a third party, they took a look at, is there potential methods that we can better serve the community? And that did, of course, uncover some additional recommended FTEs. In some cases, there is sworn FTEs and professional staff as well. In the recommendations, there's a page number that's associated to each one of those recommendations and the FTEs to give some reasoning and narrative behind the purposes of what these positions would serve within the police department. Some of the restructuring is also taking a look at the two-building model that we're currently working within. Of course, the two-building model for a police department of our size is a little bit impractical, and that's a term that's actually used within the report. It breaks down communications efficiencies and streamlined nature of not just the work, but also the staff as well. If we were to come together with one building, it may change or have some impacts on what that FTE outlook might be or time frame as well. Next slide, please. So we just talked a little bit about the people that do the work. Now let's talk about the building that they do the work within. Headquarters, as we refer to our police department here, or commonly known as HQ, it's been there since 1965. It's about 5,500 square feet in size. And there was a time many years ago when we were all within that building. For a number of reasons, another location was identified to place all of the operational divisions, namely patrol and investigations, within a separate building that we now have over on Los Gatos Boulevard. That is an old Verizon building that was refurbished. It's about 12,000 square feet in size. And back in 2009, the operational components of the police department moved into that building. That also includes the EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center, where we have a lot of trainings, community meetings, support of CERT, and other efforts as well. And then to the front of that building are some parking spaces, and there's only 6 parking spaces there. So usually folks have to park in other neighboring parking areas or along the boulevard there as well. The theme that came out of the assessment related to facility was a recommendation to look at the future space assessment. I know that's been discussed in a prior CIP conversation. And there's also the reasoning behind the necessity of that space assessment and what it would hopefully get at identifying future needs and enhancements, improvements as well. Next slide, please. Theme 3, the roles and responsibilities. Over the years, with transition in staff and aligning different needs that come in with public safety and unfunded mandates and who are going to handle some of those responsibilities, we found that in this assessment there are some overlapping responsibilities and roles. So we need to start really identifying the roles and responsibilities. We've had some retirements that have occurred, and sometimes you lose the institutional knowledge with that and you look to the next person in line. So not necessarily reasoning or defending what's occurred, it's just we've identified an area that we can certainly improve on. And when we talk about the recommendations, they're not mandatory, they're not legal obligations, they're just improvements in a future roadmap for this police department to pursue. With some reasoning behind it, justified, I guess, with this Melior, a third-party consultant company. So it also identified some of the workload as well, and I'll talk about that here in a few moments with just identifying one of our positions in the police department that we're familiar with. But we'll hold that off for a moment, and I'd like to move to the next slide for theme 4. Risk management and liability. We do a lot to try to minimize risk, but certainly there's liability that comes with it as well. One of the areas that have been identified that we can bring this together a little bit tighter is through more integrated data systems. And so that comes with efficiency, streamlined efforts through automated systems that can also be audited, and you'll see up there auditing abilities. So bringing together some of our personnel matters all within one auditing function capacity. Right now we use a lot of computer database or Excel functions. This also applies within some of our financial areas as well. And to find ways that we can utilize and lean on integrated technology to also stretch our abilities a little bit further. Next slide. Theme 5 and the process improvements. Adding on to our prior slide, taking a look at our policy development and potentially even expanding that agreement. Currently, we work with a particular policy company that over 8,000 different public safety agencies throughout the nation work with, but there's additional opportunities with a particular company, namely Lexipol. Some of you may have heard of that. It's our online policy company. And stretching that into other areas that they offer some of these automated systems. So again, looking at that process improvement with relationships that we already have through other vendors. Looking at how we can further stretch our current RIMS database, which is what we also have our CAD system, our computer-aided dispatch system through. MOUs with some of our partners and really memorializing what those partnerships look like. And then again, digging in a little bit further to our policies, process, procedures, and developing procedure manuals, really, so that when we do have transition that occurs, new staff that comes on, and we lose little bit of that institutional knowledge that is memorialized in a way that we can access, look at, and maintain that standard process. And next slide. So the next steps that I was talking about, this and some of the status of the recommendations. So of those 130, we've broken them down, and this comes with quite a few hours of assessment, reading through the document, taking a look at the recommendations, the resources that we currently have available, and our workload of our current staff. And we've broken those down into some of the low-hanging fruit and the items that we can get to immediately. And some of those might be policy updates, adjustments, procedures, but we want to make sure and be very intentional, be very purposeful about how we start attacking these recommendations. And from the time that this was produced, these slides were produced, to now, there's actually been some updates. So instead of 11 completed as of yesterday, I believe we're at 13 or 14. So that's nice that we've already been able to accomplish some of those. Some of them that we've identified that are in progress. And what we mean by in progress, the various terms that are I guess, definitions that might go with that, mean that we're reaching out to some vendors. We're trying to garner an understanding of what some systems, some databases, software that might be out there, that some of which were recommended in the report, and taking a look at how they might best fit our culture, the community needs, the external and internal customer service as well, before just immediately going with the recommendation of the third-party vendor. We want to make sure that it's appropriate fit and that these are things that we can fully assess, understand, have conversations with town staff, town manager, and you in the event that we need some additional support to go with this. There's other items that maybe due to workload or fiscal support might be longer term. We broke that down into short term, meaning that this may be attainable within the next 3 to 6 months. And then long term, some of those items that might, because there's other partnerships that might be involved, require 6 months or longer. An assessment of this size sometimes can take years to put into practice or put into place. And then finally, there's some that we haven't identified necessarily a priority or the next steps for, and so that's that remaining 21. I had mentioned, and I just want to revisit because I didn't loop back around to those roles, assignments, responsibilities, and I think somebody that we know, or at least a position that we're very familiar with that has many hats and is a perfect example, is our community outreach coordinator. That's an individual that does parking appeals, does alarms, does time cards, emergency operations, oversees our entire volunteer system, and wears so many hats, and at one time was even the town clerk. So you can see just the value that that individual brings. But we need to make sure, and what this assessment tells us, is that we need to get back to building the position for the intent that it's designed for, not necessarily for the person and what they're capable of doing. We have wonderful staff that has a large heart. Many of them grew up or are from this community and have grown to really love and care for this community, and they will work very, very hard to accomplish all the tasks that we give them. But we also have to maintain their wellness and make sure that the positions that they're fulfilling are set up for future employees in that position as well. So just to offer a little bit of that example and to kind of bring it back to somebody who we know and hold near and dear. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm certainly available for any questions from council.
Chief, thank you for the presentation. By the way, I read the report, that all 220 pages of it, and it was clear that the Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department was to be commended. It was stated more than once in the report. So hats off. We're very proud of our police department. I did also notice that the department should be recognized and applauded for the outstanding overall management of the VSU and the services it provides. So a shout out to Ms. Williams. So thank you for all the work. Again, we're very proud. I'm going to open public comment. Would anybody like to come forward with a speaker card? Are there any virtual hands on Zoom?
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, Lindley, please come forward. Welcome.
I just want to say that I really appreciate everything that the Los Gatos Police Department does and has done regarding all my contributions to the town and your response to them. So thank you, Chief Jamie.
Okay. Councilmember, no? All right. Gus, please come forward. Oh,
Thank you, Gus.
that is so sweet. Boy, you guys are loved. All right. Any other people wanting to come forward, speak in regards to the presentation? Any virtual hands on Zoom? All right. I am going to close public comments. I see the Vice Mayor had his hand up first, and I'm going to go to Councilmember Rennie, followed by Councilmember Moore, followed by Councilmember Risto. We're sharing the love. Okay.
I have a few questions, but I wanted to just kind of start with the big picture. What was the reason for doing this study? And in forming all these recommendations, how much were you involved, Chief, in the recommendations and your leadership involved in the recommendations, as compared to a consultant writing a report and dropping it off?
I'll start with the why first. And thank you for asking that question. I think it's very important. We recognize that localized policing, that it's very high touch, and we want to make sure that we make the right decisions. And sometimes we get so close to something that we lose maybe an objective lens. Additionally, we also recognize that there's a lot of community growth that's going to occur within this community, and we want to be very thoughtful of how that impact might be on public safety. Our role is to maintain a safe environment because we have a lovely community for families to come to and for people to live in, and we want to make sure that we maintain that and that we show what our next steps are, that there's, again, the purpose behind that and the thoughtfulness to go with it. Additionally, unfunded mandates are something that we've seen a significant increase in over the last several years, along with the recommendation of integrated technology. And in some cases, that comes with additional staff time, training costs. And then finally, we're really, as I've mentioned before, developing from a staffing standpoint, a very new department. From both the sworn and the professional staff side. So in developing the vision and the future from a progressive and contemporary outlook, we wanted to bring in a third party who has experience in doing this and is recognized within the industry, not just throughout the state, but also through the International Association of Chiefs of Police. This particular model, we did go with a sole source because there is a more analytical design to this versus survey-based. The CAD analysis that was done with this was done with an expert that's recognized for the work that he does. Second part to your question of how much involvement, engagement that I had with this, we were engaged from the beginning with this. We wanted to potentially be a model of how these assessments can be used, not necessarily because an agency is doing something wrong or that they're not structured in a healthy manner, but that they want to go from maybe good to great. And that's something that we want to do. Before, some people say if it's not broke, then, why choose something? But I think that there's always opportunities for improvement. And so let's take that opportunity now and do it in a way that's modern and transparent hence there not being any pages of this report that were held back from the public. And so our engagement has been very involved from the point of when these professionals were on site. We were meeting with them almost daily just to get the updates. The community meeting I opened and then I stepped out. I didn't want to have over influence on that. The command staff was not involved in many of these focus groups because we wanted to assure that there was a safe, comfortable space for our staff to be able to speak transparently, as we needed the buy-in from our staff to know that this would not be channeled in one particular fashion. Captain Tata is here this evening as well. He's our custodian of record within our police department, and he oversaw the download and release of the CAD data that was provided and the assessment of it as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. It does.
Okay, Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for the report. There was a couple places where I reacted negatively, not to the department, but to some of the recommendations, and maybe we can talk through them. The first one, it really felt like in at least some places they were just putting in cookie cutter answers that they probably are recommending to every department, and I wondered, I saw they, did a lot of analysis, but did they really understand the department? The very first recommendation is one that bothered me. It says, focus recruitment efforts on qualified, diverse candidates, particularly amongst women and Asians. I felt that was not really that appropriate for us because we're meeting the women percentage of the state. We've got women on all levels of our command staff. We have 8% Asian in the department, and we have 8% Asians in Los Gatos. So why make this recommendation? It looks like a cookie cutter thing they tell everybody to do. So that, when I started reading recommendations, the first thing that I react is like, how much did they really look at our department and tailor this to our department? Clearly they did some, but this is one place I reacted negatively. Maybe there isn't a question here. Do you want to respond to that, or shall I go to the next?
I think it'd be best to respond to that one.
Okay.
Get lost on the next one. So I guess kind of big picture first, I went through this entire report with the experts that were involved in this, including the principal of Melior Public Safety Consulting. We went through each one of the recommendations and almost page by page in this. The women component of that is because I had asked her about that, and I said, can you further explain that a little bit more? Because we want to make sure that that is customized to Los Gatos Montesreno Police Department, and I felt that it was, but that's getting at the 30 by 30 initiative. And so always striving to develop and recruit, not just from professional staff, but also sworn staff, women in policing. That's not something that the police department has signed off on. I know some agencies have. We really strive to recruit the most qualified candidates, and that's always been my take on that, and the fit for our community as well.
And I'm not against recruiting women candidates or Asian
Absolutely.
candidates, and I think our town will probably evolve to have more Asians, and to match our community, we'll want more Asians. I just thought it was a strange one, particularly on the women's side. If you've got women up and down the command staff, they're naturally going to, if they find a good woman candidate, they're going to want to hire them. So that's why that kind of bothered me. The second one that bothered me, well, there was two together, was the adding of the FTE lieutenant there. My first reaction is we're making the command staff more command, our department more command heavy by adding another lieutenant. And then they suggested, I think, it must have been a non-sworn manager also at sort of that equivalent lieutenant level over on under the other captain. And when I started counting it, and over 30% of our officers, if you count the corporals, are command staff. And now they're talking about adding more command staff. So I was reacting negatively to this idea. And we used it at first. I'm thinking, well, does that mean the captains can't do enough work, that we've got to stick more people underneath them? And we used to have a structure where we had 2 lieutenants and 1 captain, and now we have 2 captains and no lieutenants. We have the sergeants instead. And I'm like, well, maybe we should go back to that if they think that 2 captains with no lieutenants is working, versus adding 2 more sort of command staff people in there. Then when I started reading down through there, which was the other one that bothered me, about make a concerted effort to limit the practice of using corporals as field supervisors. You know, again, I don't know anything about police departments, but I use my own professional experience. And, you know, when I ran an engineering department, I would promote somebody to be a section head, and I give them 1 person to supervise to start building their ability to someday be, you know, a full manager. And so I again reacted with, well, why would you want to take away giving corporals experience to manage or manage in a patrol situation? And in here they're making this assumption, and I wonder if it's our department or it's their general. Is it a problem in our department, or is it generally something they see, and it must be a problem in our department? Is their assumption that one day or 1 week a corporal is the boss on the team, the next day he's just a fellow officer? They seem to think that was a problem, and so part of my question is that really a problem? Because it really created this cascade up to the lieutenant, where they basically said, well, because the sergeants have so much paperwork, the corporals have now got to go be a supervisor some of the time, and the sergeants have to do paperwork, so let's put a lieutenant in there so now the sergeants can go back and drive around with the team. So this is what I understood from this whole thing, and as I said, I reacted negatively a couple parts of that, and maybe you want to comment.
And thank you for the opportunity to further kind of expand on that a little bit and hopefully provide a little bit of clarity. So the intent behind the lieutenant, many of our sergeants oversee a lot of collateral teams, and as you may know, we've added additional collateral teams on, especially in recent years with the therapy canines and our EOD and tracking canines. So we have a canine sergeant. Many of our sergeants have potentially 3 or 4 collateral teams that they are overseeing. In some cases, one might be overseeing canine, peer support, you know, and several others. So that does require additional training that we need to send them to, oversight meeting with those particular teams, maybe offsite training as well, while they're also overseeing a patrol shift. And a sergeant, a patrol sergeant, needs to be out there, especially with younger or less tenured members of the department, to be out there and engage with them in their patrol functions, to be supervising them, to be available resource, and the resources that come with the patrol sergeant vehicle that they also have as well. Additionally, some of the administrative functions that they may be overseeing related to you know, personnel matters or workers' comp type matters, those are all areas and responsibilities that would be lifted off of them with the lieutenant. The lieutenant would step into some of those roles and oversee some of those collateral teams, administrative functions, and be that in-between that we used to have with the lieutenant position, and being that in-between to the operations captain in that sense, and allowing thereby for the patrol sergeants to truly be patrol sergeants instead of patrol and administrative kind of in nature. To go to the corporal component of it, our corporals, we have 4, one assigned to each one of our patrol teams. They are our primary FTOs, field training officers. They're also our youngest supervisors. And while we absolutely believe in stretch growth, to what you were speaking about, and putting them into those opportune positions and potentially overseeing a team for the period of time that their sergeant is gone, having a sergeant is an opportunity to mentor those corporals. Being a corporal can be very difficult, where they're with their peers sometimes, and then they may be overseeing a patrol shift as well. They also have collateral assignments, but we assign them less collateral assignments than we do the sergeants. So they are the first line supervisor in many cases that's out there with our patrol officers and supporting those sergeants. But also there are some cases where, like right now, we have a corporal that's assigned to as a acting sergeant to a shift. And so while we have them as the primary field training officers, it's necessary to have them available to be able to operate in that capacity, to be those trainers when we need them to be, versus being potentially a sergeant.
So in summary, it sounds like you're fairly supportive of this idea.
Yes, I would be supportive of it.
Thanks.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for this report. I really enjoyed reading it, and I think as the mayor said, I read it to be very complimentary of the police department in most ways, and I think in particular the community policing model. And I think the growth of the department and the fact that we're to a stage where we can really be assessing is a big testament to your leadership and our entire team. And so I think it's great that you and the department are, dynamic long-term thinkers that we can be thinking about, how can we go from good to great? I think that's very, very excellent. When I got to the recommendations, I actually had a question sort of in parallel to Councilmember Rennie's. I saw that first recommendation and saw that as very positive, that it seems like we're already doing some of the things that are, outlined in the report. And I think those are changes that should be applauded. But there's 130 of them, right? That's many. And you said you have done 13 so far, and so I wanted to know if there was an example of one that you were proud of that already happened, and maybe if there are any that you see as sort of next most critical to get to work on. Yeah.
So thank you for the question, and I'd also like to thank both yourself and the mayor for recognizing that when I talk about the recommendations, sometimes it's easy to look to, okay, what do we need to do next, and taking time to pause and look at what we were also applauded for throughout, I think is also very important. So thank you for recognizing that. In terms of prioritizing the next phases of this, I think that's going to require a little bit further time to truly analyze and assess. So going back to what I was mentioning of reaching out to some of these consultant vendors, starting some conversations about what the MOU timeframe and next steps might be, because some of this is probably going to be areas where we're going to need some council direction on, or bringing back to council, or have fiscal implications. So I think that we're still in an early phase of assessment and evaluation, collaboration with our partners, staff, and town manager as well, to ascertain what that will look like. I do look forward to bringing this back to council for those further details. And usually at the beginning of the year in January is a time where we bring back the biannual, which would be a review of July through December. Potentially that might be a time where I might be able to expand upon that question at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one more question for now. I think that this, most of this report looks like it was conducted before the swing shift was added. Do you think that impacts anything? Or, there's, my read on sort of a lot of the staffing recommendations, at a very high level is absolutely it would be excellent. We should definitely have more staff, but that's hard and costs money. And so when it comes to prioritizing what levels of staffing we want to look at first, do you think the swing shift will impact that or not really?
Yes, we have gone to a new staffing model. With our current staffing that's available, we haven't been able to really engage with that swing shift very much at this time. So I would say that that's still a little bit further out. With our outlook, though, thankfully we should be swearing in a lateral this coming week. So everyone makes us a little bit stronger. So we look forward to that. We're continuing our efforts on recruitment and retention. So I think we're just at a little preliminary stage to be able to say how that will look, but we continue to engage with our bargaining units, POA in this case of what you're referencing, to make sure that we're listening and that they're being heard on any feedback that they might have. So we can continue to make slight adjustments moving forward.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Councilmember Bristow.
Thank you. I do want to echo my colleagues' comments. You know, knowing that we have a very high-touch community and that we expect a lot from all of our employees, the police department stands out as typically being the people who often see our residents on their worst days, although sometimes on their good days, you know, the school resource officer and meeting with people. So I'm so appreciative of the intention to not only, I wouldn't say we want to go from good to great, we want to go from very good to great. And the very specific attention and intention that's been going on for the last few years, especially under your leadership, Chief, to make this department an example for other communities. And it's not just to make it an example, it makes our lives better on an ongoing basis. So the fact that we have this study and that we're looking at what are the ways that we can improve what you're already doing, but also address the growth that we know that is coming, I appreciate that we're ahead on that. And, you know, as I looked at, I read the whole report as well, I need to reread it. All of these recommendations, what's not broken down is which ones that you're not assigning a priority and which ones are being done. So it'd be interesting to get an update on that at some point, so we know which ones are focus and where the council will need to weigh in or support. As I read through these, I don't know enough about the structure. I mean, Councilmember Rennie bringing up how, you know, I do remember we had a lieutenant and then we didn't. I think the explanation for how the workload can be shifted, and also the comment you made about making sure that the positions describe what needs to be done and don't rely on the person fulfilling it. Because, you know, when you have an exceptional person in a position, they go so far above and beyond that you'll never be able to hire someone to do that as a position. So defining that, I think, is really important. And then I'll be interested in hearing more about what we need to start looking at for a facility, because having the divided facility, you know, just without even reading this report and knowing how people being in different areas don't have that same synergy and how that can create inefficiencies, you know, certainly is a flag to us. And so as we move forward and, you know, as we start thinking about strategic priorities next year, and we have a lot of asks, where does the planning for a facility come in and how will we approach that will be important for me to understand.
And thank you so much for your kind words about this report and the efforts that went into this. And I just want to recognize all of, you know, the entire police department that engaged with this. We've talked to our staff. We made this available to our staff early on. They have been a part of providing feedback on the recommendations because our staff are SMEs in their particular divisions and in their areas. And I may be chief of the department, but I certainly don't know, you know, everything to the detail that maybe our property and evidence member does. And so we look to him, and the full property and evidence portion of this was given to him, and provide us with suggestions on what you view as the capabilities, possibilities, and future of some of these recommendations. And feasibility as well, or potential costs. So we're still working with our staff to understand and make sure that they have a voice in what this is. But it certainly wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for all of that buy-in, collaborative effort that went into it. It was a heavy lift for everybody that was involved in this, and I'm so proud of what it came to be and the voices that jumped in on this. We didn't know what it would be like because we've never been through it, but I'm very proud of our entire team for what they've done.
Okay, Vice Mayor, and then I'll have a question to follow up.
So I'm kind of referring to page 12, where there's some ideas about the reorganization of the department, and it calls additional personnel staffing. So I have the question, and then a follow-up. What are the net additions? I'm not going to ask about the timing or the cost. I understand we're still thinking through some of that, but you know, what do we think the net FTE additions are based on the report?
I don't have the answer at this time. We haven't put all of that information together, but it's something that we can certainly work on and bring back to you.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, you know, just reading verbatim in the report, it looks like maybe about 4 FTEs, but I understand that there's reorganization and there's also productivity enhancements, that are called for in the report. I think this probably meshes with the request to do a fiscal impact analysis because, and you mentioned in your reasons for doing this was the anticipated development in time. So I would maybe just ask in the future if we could understand what the FTE recommendations are, whether, what the timing is for them, and so that we can get our finances in line with, the needs of the department. So, and also taking into account that there may be some productivity enhancements in here as well that might offset some of the costs too. So if you'd be willing to do that, I wonder if you'd be willing to come back when you're ready to talk about what the FTE request is that's related to this.
Absolutely. When I say I don't have that information at the time, it was probably kind of a little bit. Let me expand on that just a little bit. So when you mentioned technology, sometimes technology can help fill some of those areas, those gaps that they're referencing, and also what the future holds for two building versus a consolidated model. Sometimes we find efficiencies that come along with that as well. So I don't want to prematurely speak to what that net might look like without having a full holistic understanding of what technology may offer us, consolidation may offer us, and then the impact with the FTE.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rennie.
I wasn't going to bring this up, but we keep talking about restructuring the department. On page 88, there's a graph that's part of this 60-60-60 that they talk about. And they say that one of the 360s, you want to make sure your workload is below 60%. And it shows a plot of the percentage, and we're well below 60%. So, of course, that my mind starts thinking, well, do we have more people on patrol than we need? And I don't see anywhere in here them making any recommendations to change that. The recommendations are only to spend more money. Well, often to spend more money, we may want to think about where we can save at other places. The graphs are 20% up to 30% instead of 60. So we're well below the 60, and I'm wondering, should we be thinking about our patrol size model or something?
So I actually appreciate you bringing this up because we spent a bit of time, virtual time, and working with the individual that put this information together. And what we found is that we could be doing a better job of documenting the discretionary time that our staff is spending. So areas that maybe we are not capturing and that is filling in some of this void. And I'll back up. This is called a toolkit, which means that we can still, in the future, add in data to see where our progress is in the future and how it impacts and may adjust some of this graph. So as we move forward in some of these recommendations, an area that we've already started in some conversations is that we need to do a better job of documenting some of the discretionary and administrative time. When I talk about the collateral teams and the efforts that go into overseeing training and such of the collateral teams, we're not currently doing as good a job as we could of capturing that. When somebody's report writing, booking evidence, even eating lunch, or maybe going over an evaluation, those things are not. Those are not just an officer out maybe driving around, but that's time that's being spent on administrative efforts. Follow-up investigations are detectives and such. That information and the time that they are committing to cases is not captured in here. And so that's an area that we hope to be able to add into and potentially see an adjustment in what this looks like, because I know that we have a lot of staff working a lot overtime to fill these different voids, and that discretionary time is very important to be out there and be visible to the community. That's one, calls that we frequently get. We want to see more officers out there doing parking enforcement or traffic enforcement. And I always like to say, keep those requests to the level of parking and traffic and no more. But we want to still fulfill the interests and want of the community to be visible out there. And if we only have officers that are going call to call or doing the administrative or doing, the other follow-up pieces to this, then we don't have them out there being visible in nature. And we just need to do a better job of documenting what it is that they're actually doing.
So related to this, the reason they said in the report that you want it below 60% workload is if you get over 60, officers are now so busy just responding to everything, they're only reactive and they're not proactive. But I didn't read far enough to see whether they actually said our officers were in the mode of being proactive. You're saying, well, this graph isn't accurate. They're actually busy doing other things. So do we think our officers have enough feel of free time that they can be proactive policing things versus just reacting?
Yes. I feel like they're being quite yes and no. I don't like saying that, but yes and no. So I say that because they're doing a lot of their own investigative follow-up, just giving our staffing model that they have a case, they're working with the detective bureau to see what can I do out there in the field. That's wonderful because it develops them in particular areas that they may not have the opportunity to generally develop and stretch in. So we have, a number of our officers where normally maybe the investigators would be writing search warrants, or officers or patrol officers are writing search warrants. So they're behind the computer doing that. But that's, again, it's further development for them. In terms of the proactive nature, the community engagement, they're very engaged with and enjoy and excited in doing. I know recently our school resource officer engaged the patrol team to go to the school, one of the schools within our community, and engage in a wiffle ball tournament with some of the youth. And so that's excellent. We want to get out there in those positive, ways. But when we have staff working the overtime, maybe not available to do other things like training. We have a young department, and one of the best ways that we can get them the reps and maybe, some of the perishable skills and experience in areas that's maybe not necessarily a mandate. For instance, we did active shooter training recently, and that was a full 8-hour course, and we sent our own officers to go become trainers so they can bring that information back to us. That's not information that's necessarily captured in here, so we just need to do a better job of measuring that, I guess, to be able to show that. In making time available for them to develop in that manner. So I know that kind of took various twists and turns, but I hope that was helpful.
Well, you covered, I was going to ask about the overtime, because we've ended up been doing a lot of overtime because we're understaffed, and so even if they have the time, they might just be tired and not mentally wanting to be proactive if you're just trying to do another shift kind of thing. So thank you.
So the question that I was going to ask earlier was actually asked by the Vice Mayor, and that is my concern with the fiscal challenges of adding personnel and higher command staff, which is going to require a higher pay scale at the same time. So yes, Council will have some hard decisions ahead. Our new town manager and the Finance Department will have some work cut out for them. I imagine the Finance Commission might be involved, but we have a good team here. We support our police department. Thank you so much for the report. Would anybody else like to add anything more?
If I may just add, you touched upon something that I kind of forgot to mention. I did appreciate in the report, and I guess this is kind of part of the presentation, where it wasn't just looked at from adding sworn FTEs, that there was also the opportunity to maybe look at how certain responsibilities can be achieved through professional staff. We used to have a crime analyst, and the data analytics that we bring forward in the biannual reports, that's collectively done a lot by the command staff in nature. And the analysts used to do that for us. And so there was a recommendation in the report to bring that back, but also to be a civilian investigator in some ways and follow up on missing persons and other kind of follow-up nature things that may not require a sworn member of the department to engage on. So there's probably some creativity that we can do with this, but I do think that there's going to be some work ahead of us with that as well. But appreciate the council in supporting this effort, and was really pleased to be able to bring this to you this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to move to council matters, and I'm going to start with Councilmember Risto.
Oh, thank you. Let's see, since the last meeting on the 21st, it was kind of a Thanksgiving theme. I dropped in at the Live Oak Thanksgiving Feast, and there were almost 200 seniors having a really delicious lunch together. The decorations were nice. There were raffles. Rotary was there serving the food, and just a great reminder of what a fantastic community we have. And then that evening, I attended the Los Gatos Interfaith Service. I've been going to that for over 30 years. So every year, right before Thanksgiving, quite a few congregations, faith groups in Los Gatos get together to celebrate a Thanksgiving service and what we have in common. And that night, the Communal Service Project was donations for the Abrahamic Alliance, which is where Jews, Christians, and Muslims unite to serve the poor. So it was inspiring to hear about this work, and again, a reminder that we have so much more in common than we have that divides us. On the 22nd, I met with the Summerhill representatives for an update on the proposal at the Lodge site. On the 26th, with the Vice Mayor, we attended the we held the Council Policy Committee meeting, and some recommendations are undergoing revision, and things will be coming to the council soon on that. On the 2nd, I attended the Finance Commission meeting as an observer. Throughout the last 2 weeks, I met with a number of residents about roadway safety, parking concerns, housing questions, and a mountain lion. And so overall, I just want to say, I hope everyone enjoyed their Thanksgiving, and I hope we're all looking forward to the winter celebration this Friday night with the tree lighting and our parade on Saturday. Thank you.
Councilmember Moore.
Thank you. So my first exciting announcement is that I am starting a young leaders group, which is starting in January. I'm going to be holding regular meetings of this discussion group and community space for high school and community college age students, not just students who consider themselves leaders, but all students who want to engage in sort of meaningful conversations and build community, learn life skills, contribute to the community, and obtain mentorship. I started this because this is the kind of thing that I wished I had access to when I was in high school, and so you can learn more about that and forward the application to anyone who you think might be interested at robforlosgatos.com. I enjoyed attending a really interesting discussion of the pros and cons of ranked choice voting. This meeting was held in Los Gatos, but it was talking about Santa Clara County. There's an effort to make the county elected positions ranked choice voting. So that'd be 8 positions, and I think ranked choice voting is a really interesting system. I think there's definitely pros and cons, but I've seen it work well in other cities, so I'm curious to see how it could work in our community. I enjoyed attending a really, really interesting AI luncheon sponsored by Joint Venture, which talked both about sort of like the local policy implications of artificial intelligence, but also just how it works, which was really interesting. Like getting the speaker was a Stanford professor who does AI, for her for what she does, and she just got back from Washington D.C. where she was consulting the United States Senate on AI, and the policy implications I think right now are somewhat minimal, but the really interesting part was how the technology works, because I didn't realize I didn't understand that, so it was really cool. A few weeks ago, I attended a really great Los Gatos CERT Community Emergency Response Team meet and greet and brief training where some of our staff were there, and it was I think it was just great. It's great to bring the CERT team together, and we're really, really fortunate, I think, to have a really strong, committed CERT team, and so these are people that would get involved in the event of an emergency, and they're just super proactive and just a great group. And then finally, today I taped an episode of Podcats LG, which is the Los Gatos Podcats, and I'm doing, the last couple months, I've been doing sort of a breakdown of my newsletter after it goes out, and so enjoyed taping that, and you can find that on all podcast listening services.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Through the mayor, I had a question for Councilmember Moore.
Yes.
So the young leaders group that you're referring to, are you doing that as part of your council duties, or is that in any way being done on behalf of the town or the council?
Yeah, good question. I think I'm doing that in my role as a council member, but not through the town. It's not being held at the town. So but I think I'm only doing it because I'm a council member, probably.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rennie.
Quickly, on 11/20, I met with a couple representatives of Summerhill, of Summerhill to review their latest application plans for the lodge site. On 11/22, Silicon Valley Clean Energy Risk Oversight Committee met, and I attended the Finance Committee meeting yesterday.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So since the last council meeting, had an important meeting with the outgoing current supervisor, Joe Simidian, and the assistant county or deputy county executive, Consuelo Hernandez, along with the mayor and the town manager and the assistant town manager. And it was a follow-up to a request that we had put forward a while ago about wanting to be able to convey some of the needs of Los Gatos to the county. And I thought it was a very successful meeting with some very tangible follow-ups, and I believe that we are going to be getting more mind share on the part of the county as a result of doing that. So that was probably the most significant thing that I've been involved in. I have also participated in the Finance Commission meetings, and actually I think the Finance Commission was very productive in digging into the annual financial report. A lot of questions were raised. Many of them were answered, and the Finance Commission is going to have another round with the financial reports this month, I believe. And I've participated in the Los Gatos Thrives Foundation meetings, a couple of those that occurred, and most importantly, had a great Thanksgiving with time with the family, and also participated in the community. Thank you.
Okay. So on November 20th, I participated in a board meeting for Silicon Valley Animal Control Authority. It was my first meeting since we now joined the JPA. The same day, I also met with Supervisor Simidian along with the Vice Mayor and Town Manager to discuss strategy and funding opportunities to benefit the town of Los Gatos. That same day, it was a busy day. I participated in a ribbon cutting for Pedro's. It was a long-awaited event for the reopening of their remodel. It was very well attended, and it just simply gorgeous. On the 22nd, I had a quarterly meeting with the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, also attended by our Town Manager and our Economic Vitality Director, Monica Wren. So with that, I will turn to our Town Manager for manager matters.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The town is currently conducting recruitments for our boards, commissions, and committees. The deadline to apply is Monday, December 9th at 4 p.m. For more information and to apply, we ask residents to visit the town's website. I want to thank the town clerk for all the effort she's put into the new platform that we have to accept those applications. My hope is that residents take the initiative to participate. We have very robust commissions now, and we want to make sure that we fully engage residents, businesses, and others that qualify for those commissions to participate. The town's annual winter celebration that we're calling this year Los Gatos in Lights will be held in the Town Plaza Park on Friday, December 6th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. This is a family-friendly event with activities that include the Fisher Middle School Chamber Strings, Winter Wonderland light show, snow flurries, story walk, tree lighting, which will occur at 6 p.m., and a visit from Santa. I look forward, after many years not being able to attend that event since I've been traveling the state, working for other cities, to bring my 7-year-old daughter to enjoy that event. The next day, on Saturday, December 7th, on North Santa Cruz Avenue will be closed from Main Street to Los Gatos Boulevard from 8:45 a.m. to 3 p.m. for the Los Gatos Lions Club and LGS Recreation's annual Los Gatos Christmas Parade, Children's Parade. And with that, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Whelan, do we have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this evening, the Town Council met in closed session to discuss 2 items of anticipated litigation and 1 item of existing litigation. With regard to the existing litigation, the Town Council authorized defense of 2 council members who have been sued by Lindley Hogan, alleging a variety of violations, primarily civil rights violations.
Okay, with that, this meeting's adjourned.